Pinky promise. My mother used to say that children always make the silliest promises. I'll live with my best friend forever. I'll never love anyone else. When we grow up, we'll marry each other. She laughed when she heard me say that last one at age 8. I was standing in the middle of Sean's backyard, both knees muddy from playing makeshift baseball with an old broom. Sean wore a baseball glove nearly as big as his face, golden hair tousled by the summer wind, while I held a plastic ring I'd gotten from a vending machine candy box. "I'm serious," I said with all the conviction a child could muster. "If neither of us marries anyone else, then we'll marry each other." Sean laughed so hard he nearly fell off the swing. "Okay, promise." Then he held out his pinky finger. I hooked my finger into his under the summer sun in the small town of Cedar Hill, Oregon, and believed there was nothing more real in the world than that promise. 10 years later, I ran into Sean on the first day of college at UC Berkeley. And damn, he was handsome enough to make my heart stop for a few seconds. I was dragging my suitcase through the crowded dormitory area when I heard someone call out behind me, "Come." I turned around. Sean stood beneath a red maple tree in early autumn, nearly half a head taller than me, broad-shouldered in a gray school hoodie, those familiar blue eyes looking at me as though we'd only been apart a weekend instead of years. My mind immediately flashed to the image of that muddy-kneed 8-year-old. But the person standing before me now was someone who made every passerby do a double take. "Holy shit!" I burst out laughing. "Sean!" He stepped forward and hugged me tight. It was a hug that made me freeze for a few seconds. The faint scent of woody cologne, the warmth radiating from his tall frame, the arms wrapped around my back so naturally, as though we'd never lost touch. "I can't believe I'm actually seeing you again," Sean said. "Me neither." Truthfully, after Sean's family moved to Seattle during middle school, we gradually lost contact. At first, we still video called. Then the texts became sparse. Then we disappeared from each other's lives like so many childhood friendships do. Until today. "You really go to Berkeley?" I asked. "Business major." Sean shrugged. "And you?" "Film production." "Sounds exactly like Cameron." I laughed. Still that same way of talking that made me feel both annoyed and happy at the same time. Sean glanced at my suitcase and raised an eyebrow. "Don't tell me you're in Hall B?" "Third floor." "I'm on the third floor too." "No way." "Room 318. I stood completely still. "I'm in 319. Sean looked at me for a few seconds, then burst out laughing. "Okay. This is getting a little creepy." I laughed too, but my heart was beating unusually fast. Some people come back into your life like an old memory returning. Without effort, without awkwardness. Just seeing them makes a part of your childhood self instantly come alive again. Sean was exactly that kind of person. On the first evening in the dorm, Sean knocked on my door with 2 cold cans of Coke in hand. "Want to go for a walk?" Berkeley at night was more beautiful than I'd imagined. Old buildings bathed in warm yellow light, music drifting from student clubs, the smell of pizza and freshly cut grass mingling in the cool autumn air. We walked around campus like 2 people who had never been apart. "Do you still remember the oak tree behind my house?" Sean asked. "Of course. You used to carve our names into the trunk." I groaned in embarrassment. "Oh my God. Don't bring that up."
Kampf Sean forever.
He tried not to smile. "Extremely dramatic. I was only 8. And you wanted to marry me." I nearly choked on my Coke. "Shut up." Sean laughed until his shoulders shook. Damn, that smile was genuinely dangerous. I realized it far too quickly during the first week of school. Sean had that very American kind of appeal. Athletic, tall, confident, incredibly good at basketball, and effortlessly charming with everyone he met. Within a few days, he'd already gotten to know half the dormitory. I was different. I liked cameras, liked writing scripts, liked sitting in coffee shops for hours color grading videos rather than going to parties. But strangely, Sean always pulled me into his world. "Come eat with us. Come watch the game. There's a party tonight. Cam, stop hiding in your room." And almost every time I went, partly because I missed Sean. The rest, because I was beginning to realize I liked watching him more than I should. I realized it most clearly on a night late in September. The dormitory lost power due to heavy rain, and everyone on the floor had to sit in the common lounge with candles and phone flashlights. A group of students started a game of truth or dare. I was about to slip back to my room, but Sean grabbed my wrist. Stay. This game is all drama. That's exactly why it's fun. I sat down beside him on the sofa. Big mistake. Because Sean was wearing a fitted black t-shirt that hugged his shoulders, and the scent of mint shampoo kept drifting over me like some kind of pleasant torture. The game had been going for about 20 minutes when a girl named Melissa pointed at Sean. Truth or dare? Dare. Okay. She smiled mischievously. Kiss the hottest person in this room. The whole group erupted immediately. I laughed, ready to watch Sean walk over to the red-haired girl from the law school who'd been flirting with him all week. But Sean didn't move. He leaned back into the sofa, eyes drifting around the room for a few seconds, and then stopped on me. My heart skipped a beat. Sean, Melissa prompted. He was still looking at me. Then he smiled very slightly. Pass. The whole group booed. Coward. You can't pass. Sean's scared. But Sean just shrugged. I don't want to. I didn't understand why that made my chest feel warm for the rest of the night. 2 weeks later, I got sick. Not a mild cold. I had a fever bad enough that I couldn't get out of bed, my head pounding like a drum. Around 6 in the evening, there was a knock at the door. I cracked my eyes open. Kang. It was Sean. I'm fine I murmured. Bullshit. He stepped into the room, placed his hand on my forehead, and swore quietly. Jesus Christ, you're burning up. I'll be fine. Have you eaten anything? I said nothing. Sean sighed, the helpless kind, and disappeared for about 20 minutes. When he came back, he had hot chicken soup, cold medicine, and a bottle of electrolyte water. I don't need to be looked after like a child, I said. True, but you're acting like one. I laughed weakly. Sean sat on the edge of the bed and handed me the soup. That moment was strange enough to ache. Because some people, just by showing up, make you feel like you're home. I watched Sean bent over the blister pack of medicine, his lashes casting shadows in the warm lamplight, and realized I was in trouble. I actually liked him. Not the fleeting crush kind. Not the college curiosity kind. But the kind of feeling that makes you look at someone and think, if this person held my hand, I think I'd remember the feeling for the rest of my life. Sean looked up. Why are you staring at me like that? I startled and looked away. Nothing. Come. He looked at me for a few seconds, then smiled softly. I'm really glad I found you again. My heart nearly melted right then and there. And the most terrifying part was, I started thinking about the promise we made at age 8 far more than was normal. I always thought having a crush on someone in college would be simple. You meet someone attractive. Your heart beats fast a few times. Maybe you flirt back and forth, kiss at some party, and then either fall for each other or forget each other within a few months. But Sean wasn't like that. The biggest problem was that he had been home to me before he became someone I had feelings for. That made everything far more dangerous. Around mid-October, Berkeley nights started turning cold. I was sitting in the library editing my film project when my phone started buzzing repeatedly. Sean, you still alive? Sean, or did your deadline finally kill you? Sean Cam. I laughed and typed back.
I'm studying.
3 seconds later, a video call came through. I picked up with a look of resignation. Since when did you become clingy? Sean's face appeared on the screen, loud music in the background. I'm at a frat party. Then enjoy it? Boring. Why? He panned the camera around the packed house. Too many drunk straight dudes. I laughed out loud. You're also a drunk straight dude. Sean paused for a beat. Then he looked at me through the screen with a strange expression. Who said? My heart stopped. What? But Sean just smiled. Nothing. You little. I'm thinking about pizza. Don't call me when you're drunk. I'm not drunk. Sean. Okay, maybe a little. I shook my head, laughing. He propped his chin in his hand and looked at me for a few seconds. You're cute when you smile. The air went quiet. The music behind him was still loud, but my head felt like someone had pressed pause. Sean blinked. Did I just say that out loud? Yeah. Oops. I tried to keep my voice even. Go to sleep, idiot. Only if you promise not to stay up until 4 a.m. editing videos. No promises. I hate that you don't take care of yourself. Something tightened very gently in my chest. Good night, Sean. He looked at me for a few more seconds before smiling softly. Night, Cam. The call ended. I sat perfectly still in the library for almost a minute, heart pounding like crazy. Things between me and Sean began to shift after that. Whether I was imagining it or something genuinely different was happening, I couldn't be sure, but he touched me more than before. An arm around my shoulder while we walked. A hand at the small of my back while pushing through a crowd. Fingers brushing my wrist when he passed me a coffee. Gestures small enough that, coming from anyone else, I wouldn't think twice about. But because it was Sean, everything became too much. Especially on Halloween night. The dorm threw a party on the rooftop. I kept it simple, a black bomber jacket and fake blood makeup that my classmate had insisted on doing. And Sean, that insufferable person, wore a cowboy costume. Fitted jeans, leather boots, white button-down shirt open 2 buttons at the collar, and a Stetson hat that made nearly every girl on the rooftop stare. I hate you, I said the moment I saw Sean step out of the elevator. Why? You know why. Sean grinned ear to ear. Did Cam just call me hot? I'd rather jump off this roof. Liar. He looped an arm over my shoulder and pulled me into the crowd. Music shook the floor. Red and purple lights swept across Sean's face, making him look like a dream too beautiful to be real. I tried not to look too much. I really did try, until a blonde girl walked up to Sean. Hey, cowboy, she smiled, clearly flirting. Dance with me. I immediately turned away. I didn't understand why my chest felt so uncomfortable. I grabbed a beer and moved to stand against the rooftop railing, trying to focus on the distant city lights. A moment later, someone stood beside me. Sean, where did you go? I don't like crowds. Bullshit. I said nothing. Sean propped his elbows on the railing and tilted his head to look at me.
Come.
Are you jealous? I nearly choked. What?
No.
Sure. Sean. He laughed very softly. Then, without warning, he took off his cowboy hat and put it on my head. Okay, Sean said. Now you're the cuter cowboy. I genuinely hate you. No, you don't. He said it so gently, so certainly. I turned to look at Sean, and in that moment, city lights reflected in those blue eyes. I had the feeling he was about to say something very important. But then his phone buzzed. The moment vanished. Basketball team, he sighed. I have to go down for a bit. Go ahead. Sean looked at me for a few seconds before walking away. I stood alone on the rooftop with a heart in chaos. And for the first time in many years, I let myself hope. A week later, I made the biggest mistake of the semester. I went with Sean to one of the school's basketball scrimmages. Berkeley won by a razor-thin margin. The stands went wild. Sean hit the final shot and was nearly crushed by his teammates celebrating. I had never seen him look that radiant. After the game, the whole team headed to a bar near campus. I hadn't planned on drinking much, but then Sean kept clinking his glass against mine. To the win. To you finally leaving your room. To Cameron being less dramatic. By the 4th drink, I was starting to feel dizzy. By the 6th, I couldn't think straight anymore. Sean walked me back to the dorm close to 2 in the morning. I can walk on my own, I mumbled. You just walked into a tree. It appeared out of nowhere. Sean burst out laughing. It was freezing cold. Our breath turned to white smoke in the air. When we reached my door, Sean still hadn't let go of my waist. I'm fine now, I said quietly. Sure. Yeah. But he didn't leave. We were standing very close to each other in the quiet hallway. Too close. I could smell the beer and mint on Sean's breath. Could see every line of his lips with perfect clarity. And maybe it was the alcohol. Or maybe I had been holding these feelings in for too long. Or maybe it was the way Sean was looking at me, the kind of look that made me lose all reason. I said softly. Do you remember the promise we made when we were little? Sean went very still. Which promise? That we'd marry each other. Silence. Sean looked at me for a long moment. Then he smiled, not the teasing kind. I remember. My heart pounded hard enough to hurt. I used to think. I swallowed. Maybe I never forgot it. Sean's expression changed completely. Everything happened too fast after that. He stepped closer. His hand touched my cheek, unbearably gentle. And then, Sean kissed me. The moment Sean kissed me, the entire world seemed to disappear. No more dormitory hallway. No more heating system humming outside the window. No more alcohol making my head spin. Only Sean's warm lips touching mine. Barely there, as though he wasn't certain any of this was real. My heart beat so hard it was almost painful. The kiss lasted only a few seconds. But when Sean pulled back, I stood frozen, like someone had stolen my soul. He looked at me from very close.
Come.
I didn't know what to say. I had imagined this moment hundreds of times in my head. Sometimes before falling asleep. Sometimes in the middle of class. Sometimes watching Sean smile at someone else and hating myself for it. But in all those imaginings, I had never prepared for Sean to actually kiss me. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Those words sent my heart plummeting straight to my stomach. What? I shouldn't have done that when you're drunk. Oh. Sean rubbed the back of his neck, an expression of rare uncertainty crossing his face. He exhaled. Fuck. I've wanted to do that for a long time. I snapped my head up. For a long time? He laughed softly, the helpless kind. Cam, did you really think I called you every night just because I was bored? I felt my brain stop working entirely. Wait. I like you. Sean said it without any detour.
No hesitación.
I've liked you since I ran into you at Berkeley. I stared at him. You're joking, right? Seriously. I thought you were straight. I thought so too. Silence fell between us for a few seconds. Then I started laughing like a madman. Not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do when I was too happy. Sean laughed too. Your reaction is so weird. I just spent 2 months torturing myself because I thought I had feelings for my straight best friend. Sorry about that. You jerk. He stepped closer. So, Sean said softly, can I kiss you again? I hadn't even finished forming a response before Sean pulled me back. This kiss was deeper, slower, no longer a moment of lost control, but the kind of kiss that made warmth flood through me from head to toe. I grabbed onto Sean's hoodie on instinct, and he smiled against my lips. God, I thought I could get addicted to this feeling. When we pulled apart, Sean pressed his forehead to mine. I think we just changed our entire friendship. Worth it. He burst out laughing immediately. God, you're so cheesy. Shut up. But I was grinning like an idiot too. The next morning I woke up in a state of complete disorientation. For one split second, I thought everything from last night had been a drunk dream. Until my phone buzzed. Sean. Morning? Boyfriend? Smiley face. I buried my face in my pillow and screamed silently. Holy shit. Holy shit. Holy shit. I shot out of bed so fast I nearly fell off it, then flung my door open. Sean was standing right there in the hallway, 2 coffees in hand and that insufferable familiar grin on his face. I hate you, I said immediately. No, you don't. I just woke up. I look terrible. Still cute. My face went hot. Sean handed me a coffee and leaned against the doorframe. So, he raised an eyebrow. You remember last night? Every single detail. Good. Did you actually call me boyfriend? Any problem with that? I've never had a boyfriend. Sean blinked. Seriously? Yeah. I just became Cameron Parker's first boyfriend? Don't act like you won an Oscar. Actually, this is a major achievement. I laughed helplessly, and Sean looked at me with an expression so soft my heart melted all over again. Loving Sean felt like living inside a coming-of-age film that was almost too perfect. At least at first. We didn't tell anyone, not out of shame, but because we both wanted to keep things private a little longer. It felt like having a beautiful secret that belonged only to us. Stolen hand touches under the dining table. Texts that said miss you between classes. The time Sean knocked on my door at midnight just to hold me for 5 minutes before going back to his room. I had never been this happy. One evening late in November, the rain was heavy enough that campus was nearly deserted. I was sitting editing a video when Sean climbed through my window. Literally.
Jesus Christ.
I startled. The front door is right there. Romantic entrance. We're on the 3rd floor. Sean grinned and stepped inside, hair damp with rain. I missed you. You saw me 3 hours ago. Still. He pulled me to my feet and wrapped his arms around me. The smell of cold rain and damp hoodie made me laugh. You're actually insane. Yeah. About you. I groaned helplessly. Why do your cheesy lines still somehow work? Natural talent. Before I could argue, Sean bent down and kissed me. This kiss was soft enough to ache. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, it was only the dim yellow glow of my desk lamp and the sound of my heart completely losing its mind. Sean pressed his forehead against my shoulder and said quietly, I think this is the first time I've ever truly loved someone. The words made my throat tighten. I held him closer. Me too. Thanksgiving was approaching, and that's when things began to get complicated. I'm going back to Seattle for a few days, Sean said over dinner in the cafeteria. I went very still. Oh, what's wrong? Nothing. But Sean knew me too well.
Come.
I sighed. I shrugged. I hate having to be away from you. Sean's expression softened. You know we'd only be apart 4 days, right?
I'm dramatic.
Very. He smiled and took my hand under the table. Come with me. I blinked. To Seattle? Yeah. I can't just randomly show up at your house on Thanksgiving. Why not? Because it's a family holiday. Sean looked at me for a few seconds. Then he said very quietly, You're family to me. My heart nearly stopped. In the end, I went. And it was simultaneously the best and the most terrifying decision of my life. Sean's house was in the suburbs of Seattle. A classic American home with a white wooden porch and a wide backyard covered in red and orange maple leaves. Sean's mom hugged me the moment we stepped through the door. Oh my God, Cameron. You've grown up so much. Sean's dad laughed and clapped me on the shoulder. The kid finally came back. Everything should have been ordinary. But then at dinner that first evening, Sean's mom said out of nowhere, You two were so adorable when you were little. Sean cried for a whole week when Cameron moved away. I whipped around to face Sean. You never told me that. Sean immediately flushed red. Mom. He even kept the little toy ring. Mom. My throat nearly closed. What? Sean's mom laughed and stood up to go somewhere. 30 seconds later, she returned with a small, worn box. Inside was a cheap silver plastic ring from a candy vending machine. I went completely still. Sean was looking somewhere else like he wanted to vanish off the face of the earth. You still kept it? I asked quietly. He mumbled. I told you not to bring it out. Sean. He finally looked at me, and I saw that those blue eyes were completely serious. I never forgot that promise. Couldn't sleep that night, partly because of mild jet lag. The rest because Sean had kept a plastic toy ring for over 10 years. I lay in the guest room staring up at the dark ceiling, my heart beating erratically every time I remembered the look in Sean's eyes when he said that. I never forgot that promise. God, how was anyone supposed to handle that? Around 1 in the morning, the door quietly opened. I knew you weren't asleep, Sean whispered. I hate that you know me so well. He laughed softly and slipped inside, wearing his gray hoodie and sweatpants like it was the most natural thing in the world. Move over. Sean, this is your parents' house. And what if someone catches us? Mom has thought we'd end up married since we were 8 years old. He shrugged. She probably won't be that shocked. I buried my face in the pillow and groaned. Sean climbed into bed and lay beside me in the dark. That moment felt too familiar, too warm, like we had been doing this our whole lives. I still can't believe you kept that ring, I said quietly. I don't even know why I did. Bullshit. He laughed softly. Okay, fine. Sean turned to look at me. Maybe because when we were little, you were the most important person in my life. Something tightened in my chest. I used to think, he said slowly. After we moved, we'd gradually forget each other like every other childhood friendship. Yeah, but I couldn't forget. I was quiet for a moment, then asked something that had been stuck in my head for a long time. When you saw me again at Berkeley, I swallowed. Did you like me right away? Sean laughed very softly.
Come.
You stepped out of that car in that ridiculous red flannel shirt. Hey, and your hair was longer than when we were kids. He smiled. I looked at you for about 5 seconds and thought, I'm done for. My face burned immediately. I hate that you know how to make me blush. Impossible not to. I turned to look at Sean in the dark. He really was too handsome. Not the flawlessly sculpted, magazine model kind of handsome, but the kind where the more you look, the less you can stop. Especially when Sean looked at me with those soft eyes. Can I ask you something? I said. Anything. Have you ever dated anyone before me? A few people. A quiet pang hit my chest, even though I knew it was nothing strange. Sean seemed to sense it immediately. Jealous.
No.
Liar. I glared at him in the dark. Sean laughed and lightly brushed his fingers against my wrist. But no one was like you. Every irrational pang of jealousy dissolved at once. I hated how Sean always knew how to do that. Thanksgiving the next day unfolded in the loud, wonderful way that American family holidays always do. Football on TV. The smell of roasting turkey filling the house. Old jazz playing from the living room. And Sean barely left my side. He touched me unconsciously all day, pulling out my chair, handing me the first slice of pie, standing just a little too close behind me while we helped his mom in the kitchen. You two are still as attached as when you were little, Sean's mom laughed. I nearly dropped the bowl in my hands. Sean remained perfectly calm. Cam likes being near me. You jerk. Sean's mom burst out laughing. But then she glanced at both of us with a strange expression. Not uncomfortable, not surprised, just like she had known something for a long time. In the evening, Sean pulled me out to the backyard. Seattle was cold enough that our breath turned to white mist. The old oak tree was still there in the corner of the yard. And so were our names.
Come, Sean forever.
The foolish inscription carved with a plastic knife at age 8 had faded with time. But it was still there. Holy shit, I murmured. Sean stood beside me, hands tucked into his hoodie pockets. I always thought my parents would cut this tree down. Why didn't they? Mom said it was sweet. I laughed. A cold wind swept through and made me shiver. Immediately, Sean took off his jacket and draped it over my shoulders. You'll get cold. I'm fine. Sean.
Come.
He looked at me and smiled. Okay, maybe I just wanted you to wear my jacket. Shameless flirt. Only with you. Something in my chest went completely soft. We stood in silence for a moment under the warm yellow light from the porch. Then Sean asked out of nowhere, Are you scared? Of what? Of us. I turned to look at him. For the first time since we'd started dating, Sean didn't look confident. I've never been this serious about anyone before, he said quietly. And that's a little terrifying. Something in my heart ached. Sweetly. I moved closer and laced my fingers through his. I'm scared too. Yeah. I smiled softly. But if it's you, I want to try. Sean looked at me for so long I felt breathless. Then he pulled me close and kissed me in the cold Seattle night. Slow. Warm. Full of a feeling like we had already belonged to each other for a very long time. And in that moment, I truly believed the promise made at age 8 could come true. Until we went back to Berkeley. Everything began to change after the break. Not between me and Sean, but in the world around us. People started to notice. Maybe because Sean looked at me differently. Maybe because we were always together. Or maybe because Sean was nowhere near as good at hiding his feelings as he thought. Okay, my classmate Lisa said, sitting beside me at the cafeteria. I have to ask. Ask what? Are you and Sean dating? I nearly choked on my water.
No.
Lisa just looked at me with a pleased expression.
Come.
Sean looks at you like you're the only person who exists. My face went hot. It's not that obvious. Babe. Lisa laughed. It really is. Before I could respond, Sean appeared behind me and leaned down to press a light kiss to the top of my head. Hey! Lisa looked at me with total victory. I wanted to dig a hole and climb into it right then and there. That evening I talked to Sean in his room. We're not exactly subtle anymore.
Sorry.
He still wore that completely innocent smile. I forgot. You literally kissed my head in the middle of the cafeteria. And, Sean, he laughed and pulled me onto his lap. I don't like pretending you're not my boyfriend. My heart went soft all over again. That was the biggest problem with Sean. I had never once won against him. Aren't you scared? I asked quietly. Of what? What people think? Sean looked at me for a few seconds like he didn't understand the question. Then he shrugged.
No.
Just like that.
Come.
His hand moved gently to the back of my neck. I spent more than 10 years to find you again. His gaze softened. I don't want to waste more time pretending. I felt my heart completely melt. Then Sean smiled. Besides, you're too cute to hide.